welcome to another episode here in the Blue Sofa. Today, we're going to talk about something I call transactional versus transformational leadership. And it's basically, again, transformational leadership theory in our transformational leadership series, where we're going to talk about these two types of leadership and how they're very closely related to why some businesses plateau, like can't seem to grow from that level that they are, and why other businesses expand. As you know, like this podcast is, I say we go beyond strategy, we go beyond tactics, we go beyond marketing, we go beyond sales, we go beyond product development and all of those strategic things that we can, all of these strategic pillars in our businesses we of course have, and it's very important, but we're going to move beyond that. And today we are in episode number 4 in this transformational leadership series. Last episode, we talked about immunity to change and how we as leaders, founders, decision makers in our business can consciously want growth. Like that is obviously on everybody's vision board and to-do list, right? Like, and strategy meetings, like this is what we want. This is the reason, the full purpose of our business, right? And unconsciously, we can still protect ourselves from that same growth. And that happens in you as a decision maker in your business, but it definitely also happens in your team members or stakeholders or whoever is surrounding your business and supposed to help with your growth. So today, I want to say, if you haven't listened to that, go and do that, because it's so profound. It's very like business psychology coded episode, but it's so profound. Actually, I share a few methods in that episode on how you can move beyond that immunity, like beyond that unconsciously protecting yourself. Today, I want to talk about, well, of course, all of these themes are linked together, but I want to talk about something that's a little bit different. And I want to talk about how we lead, how a leader operates. And because there is a difference between how we operate and how we lead, that difference determines whether you plateau or you expand. And specifically, we're going to talk about transactional leadership and transformational leadership. And that distinction actually comes from a political scientist called James MacGregor Burns, and he developed this theory in the 70s. And later, it was expanded by Bernard Bass, who is an organizational psychologist and works in organizational psychology, right? And I think it's a very, very fascinating and interesting theory to dive into and to translate, especially if you are a founder or a decision maker, leader in your business, because most business owners, they actually see themselves as somebody who leads a mission, who has something they really want to impact the world with, right? And by then we think we are leading. But in reality, when we look at how we are operating, how we are leading, we are actually often managing transactions. So this is important if you want to turn that effort into real impact. You want to turn that into a business that expands and grows, and also that changes lives as you do this, but also that is not necessarily 100% dependent on you. And that's why leadership is so interesting, because leadership is not only the discipline of leading yourself and leading your business. It is leading impact, leading change, and getting other people on board of that wave. That's where transactional and transformational leadership, that distinction and how to do both, is extremely important. When we look at the differences from transactional leadership to transformational leadership and how that changes, like the perspective on, if you lead from transactional or you lead from transformational, how that changes how you grow your business, what you have to look at is If you are more transactional or transformational, it will impact everything in your business. And that's what I find so fascinating. It will impact how you make decisions. It will impact how you design and the architecture of your entire business. It will impact how you market. It will impact how you form your messaging. It will impact how you deliver your products. It will impact how you lead your business and ultimately how you grow. And when you plateau, and also I call this the multiplier effect. If you can tap into that multiplier effect, and that multiplier effect is basically expansion. So that's where what you do and how you lead expands and multiply because you impact and you influence the people around you to be the best versions of themselves. So let's look at it. And I want to start with defining transactional leadership and what that actually looks like. And I want to say transactional leadership is important. It's not something where we can just toss it away and say it's not important. It is definitely important. It is what is called exchange based, and it's built on this kind of logic. If I do X, then I get Y. Meaning, for example, if I'm more visible, then I get more sales. If my team performs, then I reward them. If revenue drops, then I change the tactic. If engagement is low on social media, then I change the hooks, for example. You see what I mean? It's performance management. So you're managing performance. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. It works. It's important. And we do it. Most people do it. And this is where most business owners starts, most founders, leaders starts, because it's measurable, right? And it's controllable. You focus on metrics, you focus on outputs, on conversion rates, on launch numbers and daily tasks. These are the KPIs, and you use that to manage your business. The thing is, though, and what I've seen again and again and again and again, is that this does not necessarily develop the business or expand the business. And very often you can do this to a certain level, and then the plateau starts to show itself. And what happens when that plateau, when you see that plateau, because you can read it you can measure it, and I want to talk about something that can be a little bit uncomfortable. Do you know how it's important that we look at things that are uncomfortable, because it's important to change those things. So transactional founder will for example, react to revenue dips immediately. They will change strategy very fast. They will over-focus on short-term numbers and micromanage performance if you hit that plateau, and you'll start looking for where can we get the quick wins to get what we want, to get performance to meet the level we want performance to meet. The thinking is, what tactic will fix this? And this is where we try to fix something with what we already know. And this is a very specific distinction, because transactional is that logic, and logic is always based on what we already know. It's based on the past, right? It's based on our experiences. So a transactional leader, a founder, or decision maker will ask, how can we fix this performance dip so we can get the performance to the level we want the performance to be in? And this is why you will see people constantly rebuilding funnels, switching niches, redesigning offers, buying new templates, buying consultants that's going to fix the growth problem, consuming more strategy, using new tactics. And it feels really productive. It really does. And I think this is the uncomfortable conversation, because it does feel productive. It feels like you're doing something, and some of it might even help a little bit, but the problem is it does not expand the capacity of the business. And what it does is it increases activity. And here's the thing. the transactional thinking cannot scale and expand over and over and over again, because scale requires more than just exchange. It requires that you develop. It requires that the business develop, and it requires the capacity in the business. I want to talk a little bit more about this, what that means in when we go into transformational leadership, but the capacity of the business, how much growth the business can handle, you as a leader can handle, your team can handle, the structure, the architecture, the design of the business can handle, has nothing really to do with transactional leadership. So let's dive a little bit into what transformational leadership actually means. James MacGregor Burns describes transformational leadership as leadership that elevates both the leader and the followers. So it changes people. It's not just about results, here and now results. It's not just about KPIs and what we can measure. It changes people. It changes how people think, and it changes the capacity of people. For founders and decision makers, leaders, business owners, it means something very, very specific. It means that you develop your own capacity. You build systems instead of chasing output. So you actually design and architecture your business so it can hold the expansion that you want it to hold. And you think long term instead of reacting short term. Like, this is so incredible important. And you lead from values and that direction, the long-term direction. Also, when the business is under, or you are under, a lot of pressure. And that's like back to the capacity. It takes a lot of capacity to be able to do that and not go into stress response and not go into short-term thinking and just reacting. So a transformational leader doesn't just ask, how do I increase revenue? Of course, that's also a conversation you will have. But what you will ask yourself is, what version of me, what version of the business must exist to be able to hold that level of revenue that I'm desiring in my business? And as you maybe just like from shifting the conversation, right? From how do I increase revenue to how can I expand the capacity? What version of me must exist? What version of the business and the design of the business must exist? You completely change the conversation and the quality of the conversation. So this is not just about fixing performance. It's actually about upgrading your business, upgrading the people in your business, including yourself, because you are the one you carry the culture. I think, again, like we could do a whole podcast about this. I probably should, because you carry the culture of your business. You are a living embodiment of the culture of the business. So it's not just about transformational leadership. It's not just about fixing performance. It's about becoming that cultural carrier of that long-term vision of your business. Also when revenue dips, also when there's a lot of pressure, and keep on navigating towards that, making the pivots and the changes that are necessary without crumbling under pressure, right? So when we talk about transformational leadership, as I said, we don't just talk about fixing performance. We upgrade the structure and the capacity of the business. And it's not just about demanding output from other people from the team. We actually want to develop how the team think, how the team interacts, how the team's behavior is. And again, that comes down to, like we talked about in the last episode, comes down to, do we have a team that is basically immune to change? Then we have a deeper, more structural problem within the team that has nothing to do with KPIs. And we can't fix this with hyping or trying to motivate them into working more or changing direction or selling more. That's gonna deflate at some point. We have to like go into the root of the problem here and develop how the team think and how the team actually show up in this situation where change is needed and transformation is needed, right? So transformational leadership requires a more complex way of thinking in your business, a deeper way of thinking, and also making sense of things and making meaning of things, because it requires from you, but also from the team or volunteers or whoever is working with you, your board members. It requires holding ambiguity, like being able to hold that complexity, right? Being able to navigate with delayed rewards. It's something that can be extremely different and difficult if you are used to being more driven by short-term goals, or have a team that's with a culture that is driven by short-term goals, right? It requires being able to hold emotional discomfort. I mean, again, it's one of the biggest transformational leadership tools that I have in my backpack is the ability to be in discomfort, emotional discomfort within a group of people. Because when we are able to do that, we can bring things to the table, unresolved conflict or conflicting emotions or conflicting intentions. We can bring that to the table and we can create a shared direction instead. And it's extremely powerful. So that's also transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is also being able to place responsibility and accountability without control, but with trust, like really trusting that the people around you have your back and the people around you want what you want, right? Want this this vision of the business to manifest itself, because the way you lead and the way you unwavering trust in the mission rubs off on the people. That's how responsibility becomes, turns into self-motivation, basically, because you carry the vision with such a strong belief, right? And you are the cultural anchor into being the solution-oriented, deeply listening, emotional, intelligent person that a transformational leader actually also is, right? So many founders, decision makers, business owners want to scale without wanting this expansion. And I don't think it's because they don't want the expansion. I think it's actually because we never really taught that this is the expansion, because you can't scale with pure transactional logic, because scaling does, and I think you probably already know this if you are over the startup phase, scaling does require delegation, letting go of control, trusting your systems, allowing other people to think differently than you, because you understand that 1 + 1 + 1 can be 5 if you allow different minds the freedom to flourish, right? Also making decisions that don't pay off immediately. That scaling does require that. And transactional thinking says if it doesn't produce something now, then it's wrong. And transformational thinking says if it builds structure, if it creates impact, if it changes how people think and interact, then it really matters. So it's completely different. It's a completely different orientation, right? And when you change your perspective from being purely transactional to leaning into the transformational leadership part, you know why some founders and some businesses plateau at the same income year after year, right? Even though they're working hard. And it's simply because they haven't upgraded how they lead. They're still managing transactions and not transforming structures within their business, whether it's their own like internal structure or the team's capacity and structure or how they design their business. So I think if just want to reflect a little bit and just, I want to invite you to just take a few moments and ask yourself, are you managing your business or are you developing it? Are you reacting to numbers or are you analyzing the structure behind the numbers? When something dips, do you immediately try to fix it with a tactic or do you investigate the system? If your team underperform, do you then tighten control, or do you invest in developing how they think? All of these questions will help you kind of diagnose you in the transactional leadership path, or are you in the transformational leadership path, and also help you understand if you need to pivot in your leadership style. Leadership maturity, you are the leader of either it's the business, right? Or if you're a startup, you're a leader of your vision, or maybe you're even a leader of a team or big team, right? And that maturity growing up in your leadership, growing into your leadership, that really determines how your business grow and expand over the years. And another thing is that what I've seen again and again is that if we keep on being stuck in transactional leadership, it's almost impossible to expand, because there's no way we can shortcut structural growth. And again, I just want to emphasize that transactional leadership will get you started. That's where we start. And it's an organic and natural expansion of our leadership that we move into transformational leadership. It's completely normal. And if you feel like no matter what you do, no matter how hard you work, you are just not moving proportionally, then I will really, really, really invite you to lean into some of the transformational leadership principles, because you may not need more effort at this point. You might need to develop your leadership instead, or develop your teams instead, or develop the structure of your business. So I hope that this makes a lot of sense. For me, it's so exciting to observe structural or observe transformational versus transactional leadership. And these are topics that I see all the time. Even startup businesses at a certain point have to start looking at how you lead and move from transactional to transformational. It has a lot of effects. And also when we go to scale up, or we go into even bigger corporations, moving from transactional to transformational will completely transform your business. That's for sure. And transform how you grow and how much potential you can get out of your assets, meaning your products or your team, actually, the people in your business. It's absolutely transformational, and I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to share this with you today, and I hope you are too. Next episode is going to be the last one in this series, and we're going to talk about something I think I'm actually also excited about, and I'm always excited about what I talk about in my podcast. A little background story is that 13 years ago, I was finishing up my master in actually change management. And I wanted to write a PhD at that point in this specific topic. Life wanted something else, and we had our third child, and unfortunately, maybe you even know the story, she got a really bad brain injury, and me and my husband, we chose to rehabilitate her instead of me pursuing that path in my career. And then I started my business instead, and the rest is history. But I wanted to write a PhD in this exact thing that I'm going to share with you in next episode. And it is basically how we lead our businesses from the future, from this emerging edge of creation, from what is to come into the future, instead of leading it from our past. And this is how leaders perceive reality before they act. It is how we, instead of just reacting from our programming, we actually with some very specific tools sense what is coming and how can we be in this innovative space of creating in our business. Crazy exciting topic to dive into, and I'm very excited to share that with you. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this episode about transformational and transactional leadership and how you can apply this into your business already now. See you in the next episode.